This video, we're going to dive into this marketing category. So the marketing category is a drop down, and the first one we're going to look at in this video is your campaigns. So the campaign builder is where you actually create the automations of automatically creating the emails and SMSs, messengers, ringless voicemails, whatever you want to do to your contacts. In terms of when these are triggered to send, that's covered in a separate video when we talk about triggers. However, this video will show you how to actually build these out. So what we're in here is a demonstration account called Tutorial Business, and in here we have 3 existing campaigns. So I'm going to use these campaigns to show you how to edit things because it'll be a lot faster to create one, to work off something that's half there. But firstly, I'll show you what you'll see because you might be working from scratch or you might want to create your own from scratch. So here, there's a big green button up here. You just hit Create Campaign. And this will create this view here where you can set the name of your campaign. So by default, this has just come up as campaign 4. So I would just put in my campaign name here. So I'm going to call this my tutorial new campaign. Okay, from there's a couple of things I can do. I can change the status of the campaign from draft to published. The difference being that if it's set in draft, even if we try to send it to someone, it won't send. So I like to just put these to publish straight away because if I'm going to send it, I just want it to be sending anyway. But you can put it back into draft mode, which means that it won't be sent, right? So I'm going to leave this in published because one of the things to be aware of is if you forget and leave it in draft and put it into a trigger, it still won't run, right? Then from there, there's a few more options we have. So we have in the actions drop down, you can copy the campaign. So once you've created one, if you wanted to have a new one from scratch, well, not from scratch rather, and wanted to simply take, be able to leverage what you've already created, you just use the copy campaign feature. Now it's very important. If you copy a campaign, and you'll just put it into your location. If you have multiple locations, you need to choose the location. So I'm going to put it into the same location. Now, very important, notice what happens here. I'm going to call this copy copy, so there's no confusion. Tutorial new campaign copy copy. And then you hit the copy button. But notice that I'm still in the original campaign. So be very careful when you copy a campaign that you don't just then straight go into editing the campaign because you're actually editing the original. So what you will need to do is go back out of it and find the one that you've created and then edit that. So just something to be aware of. So I'm going to go back out of this and show you another feature, which is I can just in this menu delete a campaign. So I'm going to delete the one that's a copy that I just made. And we'll go back into the one that I'd created. So I've named the campaign, I've put it in published. Again, that's up to you. And I've demonstrated the copy function. Now from here, there's a couple of things we can do. We can either set the campaign configuration or we can start adding events to the campaign. I'm going to show you the campaign configuration first and what all this means. So this drop down here in the campaign configuration, let's have a look at what all these options do. First of all, you have the window. So the window basically determines when this campaign would start. So at a practical level, what this is about is saying that if somebody triggers an event that would run this campaign at 3 o'clock in the morning, but you don't want it to start at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's what this helps with. So for example, you might have an opt-in form and someone fills it out in the middle of the night and you don't want them to get your messages until a certain period, okay? Or they might be putting into this campaign after another campaign has finished. And again, you want to make sure that it starts at a good time. So what this means is you have windows. And so the windows have conditions of when and if. Okay, so the way this works is that when means that when it hits one of these times, so I can select whatever days, dark blue is selected, gray is not selected. So I could say, okay, Monday to Friday, as long as it's somewhere between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., this campaign will run. Okay, so that's what that does. So if, for example, somebody is triggered in to run this campaign at 6 p.m. on Friday night, nothing will happen until 8 a.m. on Monday morning. That's what the when window is. Now the if means that if they opt in and it is within one of these times, so for example, it's triggered at say 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, then the campaign will run. But if the campaign is triggered, like they opted in outside this window, it actually skips the campaign completely. Okay, so if you don't want it to go at all outside a particular window, it won't run. And what it will do is it'll go to the next campaign if you have set one. If you haven't set a next campaign, it won't do anything. So now that I've explained that, I'm going to turn off the window of this because that is an optional feature. Now, I am going to jump to that straight away because what next campaign means that it's saying when this campaign finishes, or if you had an if condition in the window, then it will automatically then put them into the campaign that you put here. Okay, so again, I'm not going to put one in here and just leave it blank because you don't have to use these settings. These are optional things to do. In many cases, you won't use them. Now, users mean that if I had 3 different users, for example, in my account, it means that the system will initiate like a round robin system. So the first person that comes into the campaign will be allocated to user A, the second person in user B, the third person in user C, and the fourth person in back to user A. That's what that does. Now the next thing, and again, that's if you don't want to use that, you don't have to use it, you can leave it blank. The next one is that any emails that are sent from this campaign will come from whatever email you put in just here, and they'll come from whatever name you put here. And it's good email practice to always put like a real name in here rather than your business name, because people just more likely to open an email from a person, but that's totally up to you. Okay, lead value. So there are numerous places that you can set the lead value on an opportunity. This is one of them. So you can say anytime that someone enters this campaign, allocate this value to that lead, right? So you don't have to use this. That's optional. You may choose to allocate value at different places. Tags simply means that when someone is added to this campaign and they enter this campaign, I want this tag added to them. So again, that's an optional step because you might be choosing to manage your tags via your triggers, or you could have it added here. So for example, I could put in a new tag just called new, and then anybody who's put into this campaign will have the tag new added to them. Why would we do this? Because that will allow you to sort your contacts by tags, but you might also have another trigger set that says to your platform, when the tag new is applied, then do XYZ. Maybe add them to an opportunity or something like that. Okay, and you can also remove that as well if you made a mistake. Now, allow multiple, what that means is that if someone's been in this campaign before, it will let them run again. So if that's set to on, then someone can receive this campaign multiple times. If it's set to off, then it means that if this particular contact has already been in this campaign, but for some reason they've been triggered to run again, then it won't run if that's set to off. Okay, so that's totally situation based, whatever you need it to do. But if you want it to run regardless, you leave it on. Stop on response. What this means is if they reply to an email, a messenger, or a text message during the campaign, then the campaign will stop running. Again, that's totally up to you as to whether you want to make that happen. So talking about just a couple of situations for that, let's say you're doing appointment reminders. Appointment reminders, you probably want to have this switched off because you might have a message that comes out like 2 days before their appointment saying, just getting back in touch, we've got your appointment locked in for in 2 days time, looking forward to meeting you. And then you've got 2 more reminders, maybe the day before and 6 hours before. Now, if that person writes back to that message saying, thanks, see you then, and you've got this set to stop on response, then they won't get their other reminders. So now conversely, if you've got a campaign saying, hey, we haven't heard from you since you opted into our marketing campaign, do you want to book an appointment? And they write back and say, no thanks. Well, if you've got this set to off, then they're going to keep getting reminders unless you manually remove them. So there are always cases where you might want to say, look, once they respond, I want them to stop getting messages, in which case this will be on. Or you're like, no, this is a sequence that I really want them to get regardless of whether or not they reply, and you would leave this off. So that's where that works. And then event start time, this is totally optional. What this is saying is that, say, for example, you had an event, say it was going to be 31st of October at 5 p.m., like that, then any timings in the campaign are going to be relevant to this event. Okay, so that's typically regarding minus timings, and you'll see that when we talk about appointment reminders. So this is very specific cases when you would run this. This might be, for example, you are having an event and you want to just put like a whole bunch of people into this, like existing contacts, and then add them in. Or you might be running a promotion for the event and you want them to get reminders for it based on the event time, not when they opted in. Okay, but for this one, I'm going to delete it. So that's how that one works. Very important. When you've made any changes to this, make sure you hit the save button. And if you are sending emails, make sure you do put these details in here. Because if you make changes here and either just collapse this, well, if you collapse it, it won't save. And obviously, if you hit cancel, it won't save either. It's important to note because the way the rest of the builder works is that all other changes do actually usually happen live. So for example, what I'm going to show you here when you add events, as soon as it's added, it's just there. You don't have to click a save button. Okay, so you'll see what I mean as I go further into this. So let's now add an event into the campaign. So when you add an event, you're basically telling your platform to do one of these actions. So SMS is to send a text message, Messenger is a Facebook message, email is an email, call, what this does is it will, when that hits that point, your platform will actually ring you on whatever number you've set as your business number, and it will allow you to connect with that lead. It'll tell you, you'll have an automatic message from your platform saying you've got a new lead, and it will say their name and it will say the source from where they came from. And then it will say click any button to connect, and you can click a button and it will connect. Very important feature, your platform is very clever and it will only tell you that if you answer the phone. So even when you recognize the incoming call, still say hello when the phone answers so that it knows that someone actually answered the call. Okay, voicemail means that you can deliver a ringless voicemail. So it'll go straight to their voicemail and drop a pre-recorded audio. A wait timer is something where you will actually just say at this point, wait a certain time. And we'll cover these in depth in a minute. Manual SMS is going to add them to your manual actions list under your contacts, as will manual call. So what it means is that when they get to that certain part of the campaign, it'll add to your manual action list. I'll just show you this right now. In your contacts, manual actions, it'll be added here. So if, for example, after a certain period, you wanted them to be added to a call list that you're actually going to ring them manually, you just put that in there and they'll be added in here, and you can periodically check in here and make those calls. And again, if you've allocated it to certain users, that'll pop up here, and when someone logs into their account, they will be able to just see all the calls they're required to make. It's super, super streamlined. So let's go back into our campaign. Okay, and webhook is an advanced feature if you want to trigger via a webhook. You can put that webhook URL in here, and what it will do is it will fire that webhook. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. However, if you do use webhooks, this is how you use them. And you can also set these to custom times. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So we're not going to put that in. So see how this is created here? That's what I mean. There's no save button. This is just now live. It's here. So I'm going to hit the remove button to get rid of it. Okay, so when you add an event, let's say we're going to add an SMS here, it'll automatically open the editor for that. So that's the SMS editor. If I had, for example, added an email, it would open up the email editor, right? So that's what that does. So when you add an event, I'm going to show you a few things before we get into the depth of actually how to use each one. I'll show you how to set what happens as to when that event goes. So let's use the SMS as an example. So I open the SMS, and what you get here is a title of the message. So what this is just the name of it. So I'm going to say this is the first SMS, or as you said, it defaulted to SMS1. The only person that sees this is you within the platform. Okay, so it doesn't matter what that says. That's probably a more relevant point when we get to emails, because it's not to be confused with a subject line. Now, if you have SMS templates, you can import them here, and it's the same for the email builder. So then in here, you can send what it is, and you can say hi, and you can import custom values. So you could say contact, first name, your appointment is confirmed for, and then I can put in more custom values, and I can go down, I can find their appointment, and I could say start, date, and time. And you could even say, if you were, I'm showing you how to use these custom fields, your appointment with, if you were using the user allocation, like that round robin thing I talked about, you could actually put the user's name in there as well. So that's all optional. While we're here, let's talk about some of those custom values quickly. So you can basically take any element from the contact record, the user, which is the user of your automation platform, so that's you or your team member, the appointment itself. These are just links. They're all pretty self-explanatory. This add to Google Calendar or add to iCal, what it will do is it will trigger a link to add it to their calendar. Well, that's probably self-explanatory as well. The calendar name you can insert. The name, fields from a campaign, like when that campaign is set to run. The message body, the account. So the account is stuff like from your business account, right? So the full address, for example, you can put in your website, things like that. And then custom values is an important thing to understand. So custom values we have two: best email contact and business point of contact. And what this means is that you have the ability within your account to put in things in these campaigns that you think might change from time to time, and therefore you don't want to have to go and change them in 70 different campaigns. So say, for example, I wanted to put in that, the best email to get me on is this, but it's an email that's subject to change. I have this form here, and what it will do is it will insert a value that you've set in your settings. I'm going to show you that in a minute here. So I'm going to save this to go out of it so I can just finish off that point. If I go into my settings of the account, this area here, custom values, you can see I've got a couple of created here. So best email contact, that was one I just used. It's going to put in this value here. So if I hit the edit button on this and I said, it's now, James at gmail.com and hit save, then any of those campaigns, even this one, the second one, I'll say, it's actually James Hale now, his brother, anything here, back in these campaigns will change. So if I go into this tutorial here where I had this text message, that when I send it will then say James at gmail.com, right? So that's how that works in terms of the editor. The other thing you can insert in here is trigger links. Now I don't have any trigger links set here. I'm going to talk about them in a separate video because that is an advanced application. But once you have your trigger links set, this is how you insert them, and you just drop them in like that. Okay, a few other things about the builder, and this is very similar for emails and a number of other ones, is custom time. Okay, so custom time, what it's saying is it's just like we discussed of the windows for the whole campaign, but this is setting it per message, right? So here we have one extra category. So this is the way it works. So you can have if, which works exactly the same as we described before. So if it falls within this window, then it runs. If it doesn't, it just skips the step and moves on to the next step in the campaign. The when condition, same as I explained before. So it'll wait until it actually satisfies one of these conditions, and then it'll action this step. And then we have a third option, which is exact. So this is where we can say, okay, I want this to run at exactly like, 10:03 in the morning on Monday. So what this means is that this person will wait in this campaign until when they hit this message, they will wait until 10 o'clock in the morning, or 10:03 to be precise, and then it will send the message and continue with the sequence. So that's what that means. You can also attach files to it. Important to note on adding in things like images, it does depend on your country, right? So if you are in the US, there's no problem with it. It'll work for most carriers. It depends. Like I know, like some carriers, Sprint, I think, does some weird things when the messages are delivered, but generally it's fine. If, for example, you're down under where I am in Australia, then you would have an issue with that because the numbers don't allow for images, so they won't send. So it's something to test with your provider, and this leads me on to the next step, is that you can actually test it. So you can actually say, I'm going to test this message. I just put in a phone number down here and I hit send test. And as long as your Twilio connection is correct, like your number's all set up, then it'll send the message. And what it'll do is it'll actually autofill as many of these details as it can. So for this, it won't autofill the contact name or the username because there's nothing assigned to this because it's a test, nor will it put in an appointment time. But it will enter this custom value because that's the same regardless of what's going on, right? So it'll actually enter that in. when you send the test message, and you'll see that when you test it. Any changes you make here at all, make sure you hit the save button, otherwise they won't save. Enough said. Okay, so now that we've edited the message, there's a couple of things that you need to understand about the timing of it as well. So we talked about the timing within it as to, okay, does this send it a custom time or not? So I'm setting this at exactly 10:03 a.m. or I could just have it set to off and it will send as soon as it gets to this step. Okay, so that's sort of within the step. Now, if you stepped back out of this, understanding that, okay, when this person enters this campaign, we can also put delays as to when they even arrive at this step, right? So you can think of it like this person is literally sitting in this box here until this is satisfied. So if it's 0 minutes, then they move straight to here. And then they'll work on this condition, right? It'll wait to send it Monday at 10:03. But if this box has like wait, in this case, let's say put in 5 hours, and now it says 5 hours, they'll wait in here for 5 hours, and then they'll progress in here and adhere to whatever this is. So if there is no timing, so say for example, I had this just off and saved it, it will just send this. So after they've waited here for 5 hours, it'll just go send, and they will go to the next step. Very important thing to note, however, if you have this set to immediately here, this will override any conditions that you've set in the window. So what do I mean? So if I've set this to run Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. like this, and I go save, great. That will not work because I've triggered this to set immediately. And that is the difference between immediately and after 0 minutes. Okay, so if you want it to send straight away, but you still want to have a when window or an if window, make sure that you set this to 0 minutes, not immediately. Now, if you don't have a window, there's no difference between the two. But if you do, so it's just it's good practice to set it to 0 minutes because if you do have a window, the window will still work. Okay, so that's what that does. Now, the other settings here is before. So the before one, so say it was like before 2 days. What that'll do now is that if there's an event time for this campaign, it'll run 2 days before it. Now, if you're running appointment reminders and the person is added to this campaign via a trigger on that appointment, then your automation platform will know to send this 2 days before that appointment. It's very, very clever. So what that means is that someone books an appointment, your system has a trigger in place to say, okay, when that appointment is booked, put them into this campaign, in this case, new tutorial campaign. And your system will know that when someone's put into this campaign because of an appointment trigger, I understand that the before triggers work off the time of that appointment. It's very cool. So that's what happens there. So you can continue adding events down here and they'll add in a sequence. So I can add an email here. I'm going to talk about some of these differences in a minute where I dive into other campaigns. I can, put my email together here, hit save. I can send tests. That's not going to let me. I have to put a subject line in. Go save, and then it'll sit there, right? Now, when you have a subsequent step, the delay that's mentioned here is relative to the previous step. What do I mean? Okay, so I mean that if I set this to 1 hour after, okay. Well, this is not a good example. Let's say I'll talk about two things. So beforehand would be 1 hour, right? Okay, so what this will do is it'll say, okay, this is 2 days before the appointment and this is 1 hour before the appointment. Simple. Now, if I was running this in another sequence and I said, no, I just want this to go after 2 minutes and then I want another email to go after 1 hour, this is 1 hour after this. Okay, so again, think of it like that thing of like, okay, my person is in this box for 2 minutes, then they go here. Then this sends, unless there's a window setting, or once it sends, as soon as that sends, now they're down here in this little box, and they'll sit in this little box for an hour, and after an hour, they'll go here, and so on and so on. I keep adding events. So what I'm going to do now is just dive into an existing campaign. So I'm going to go back to my campaigns and go into my demonstration campaign sequence. So this one I can see is in draft. I'm going to put it in publish. I have set some from addresses there. I've set some settings. I'm happy with all that. Okay, it doesn't have a when window, and I've actually set this to immediately. So I could make this send after 0 minutes, and it would do the same thing. Oops. Okay, and there you go. So that's now all in effect. And see, again, I don't have to hit save. All right, so that's how, that's a quick bit of editing for you. What I wanted to show you here is just a few more things with the other builders. So here's an email that's more built out that I can talk about the email builder a lot easier. So you have your title for the email up here. That's what only you see. Your actual subject line that the person sees goes in here. Just like SMS, if you have pre-built email templates, you can drop it in here and that will replace whatever's in the editor. But the editor is what I recommend you use. It's a very clean way to make nice, simple emails. This is how it works. So you've basically got this, what you see is what you get type editor here that you can edit the text. Very standard tools up here in terms of changing the formatting. An extra thing is this custom values though, right? And that's like you saw when I was editing the text message. You can put in the contacts details in here. And various other things you might want to do. So another example of that, I'll just remind you, here's my signature block down here. I might want to say, I want the signature block to be the best point of contact and I want it to be the best email. So this is obviously a simplification of what you would do, but you can see here, if I put this in all my campaigns, if I ever needed to change that, I would only have to change it once and it would change across all those campaigns. So that's how you do that feature here. Now, you can also add images to your emails, and one of the favorite things and one of the most engaging things you can add to your email is actually a GIF. So, for example, if I was to go and find a GIF, or you could create your own GIF, but I'm just going to get one from Giphy here. Let's find one. I don't know what random ones are going to be here, but let's just see what we can get. None of these are very exciting. Okay, well, let's just put in something about monkeys because that's always fun. Why not? So we're going to search here, okay, and say we wanted to put one of these cute little GIFs in. Let's say we want to put this little guy in here. So I can click on this. Honestly, we do this to create our own, like you'd often create your own GIF of your video, but just to show you, we're going to save this GIF. Okay, and then what I can do is I can go back to my editor and I can literally just drag this GIF to where I want it to go. And it just drops in there. It's so easy to do. So I'm just going to resize it a little bit. Okay, and you can see, I'll just put that on the next line. Whoops. Okay, there we go, and there's my little GIF. And you can see how it looks on the mobile version as well, right? So it's very, very easy to put images in, and you can even put GIFs in just like that. The extra one I want to show you here is about links, because when you do links in an email, you can actually have the text there as something else. So you can see here, feel free to click here to see the available time slots. So a couple of things. If you want to edit an existing link, you just click anywhere in that text and you click on this link button here and hit edit, and you can make the edits here. If you want to create a new link, you just select the text that you want to link and hit the link button. Okay. Now, what you can do here is you can put in a URL, so the website you want it to link to, and you can change the text of what it says here, or you can leave it as is. Target simply means that if it's none, it opens in the existing window of their email, or new window means it will open a new window or a new tab. The link list, though, is important because what this does is this is where your trigger links will be. So when you see the trigger link video and you're wondering how to use them, this is where you come back and put it here. You can actually put a trigger link in just here. So I don't actually want to make that a link there. I'm going to go back and edit this one. We can see here. In this case, I actually have a trigger link because I'd copied this in from another account. So see how that looks really weird? It's actually going to drop the URL of that trigger link in there. But I keep saying trigger links. I'm going to cover them in a video about trigger links. Okay, so all the other things are the same here in the email builder, attach files, custom time, except when you send a test, you just put a from address and a to address, and you'll see that come up in your email. And again, great idea to check it on your phone to see how it comes through, as well as your desktop. Very important with emails, make sure you hit that save button when you close it, otherwise you'll lose your changes. Okay, so let's have a look. You can see how this sequence builds out. This example, they get an SMS and they get an email straight away, and then 7 hours later, it sends this SMS at 10:44 in the morning. And basically what this is saying is that as long as this person opts in before 3:44 in the morning, it will send this message the next day. right? It's because it's going to wait. And if 7 hours goes past that, so if they opted in at 6 o'clock in the morning, well, in 7 hours time, it's going to be 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's going to wait until 10:44 a.m. the next day. So that's an example there of how you can see we're using a delay to sort of trigger it to the next day, and then it's sending at a particular time of morning. Right. Alternatively, you could just say I want this to go 24 hours after the first one. It would have a similar effect, but this is a very accurate way to send messages at times that might suit when you want to send your messages. So say, for example, I know someone we work with, they run an e-commerce business and they know that in their particular niche, people are most active on their shopping site between 10 and 11 in the morning. So they often send promotion SMSs and emails at like 8 in the morning and at 10 or 11 or 10 in the morning because they know it's close to a time that someone's actually either on their morning tea break or for whatever reason are actually checking their emails because they're actually online shopping. Okay, so, and this can go on and on. So I want to talk just quickly about some of the other categories here. So Messenger is pretty straightforward. You just put in the message here. You can put in your custom values and your trigger links, but it's going to come from your page as a message. I'll remove that. The call one I explained briefly before. Again, you can sort of set it at a custom time, but again, this will just ring you. You don't need to put anything here at all. You just put call and it will call you at that time. The next one is voicemail. So here you actually upload your file, and that's the ringless voicemail that will get dropped. Next type is the wait time. Okay, so this one is wait a period of time. Okay, so it's going to say, okay, I want this first, when they get to this step, I want them to wait 30 minutes, and then I want them to resume at 9 o'clock in the morning, any day of the week. So I've selected all of them. Okay, and hit save. Okay, so when someone gets to this, they're going to wait 30 minutes here, and then once it gets to 9 o'clock in the morning, it'll activate this step, and they'll go on to the next step. Okay, in this case, it's going to be a manual SMS. Now, you don't actually have to do anything in here because what this is going to do is it's going to add them to your manual actions list. Okay, or you can actually enter it there, sorry, and it will pre-populate as to sending that SMS, or you can edit it. The next one is very similar. That's a manual call. Does the same thing, but it'll prompt a phone call. And then the next one is your webhook, which we talked about briefly. If you know what they are, you'll know what to do with that. Okay, so that's basically the campaign editor. So let me jump back into one of the, I want to show you now a before timing campaign. Okay, so we've got a couple here. Appointment call confirmation. This is an example campaign. I'll put this in published. So this is an all set. So when someone books, we want to send this message. It just says you're booked with Selena, and it says the appointment start time. If anything changes, just let me know. That's all it does. You can see this is really simple. There's nothing at all set into the campaign configuration. It just sends an SMS. And then we've got our reminder sequence, which is the one that we would hook up with a trigger based on the time of the appointment. So in this case, we've got minus 1400 minutes. If you wanted to make that simpler, you would say 24 hours. That's basically the same thing. I could change that to 24 hours and it will send 24 hours before the appointment. But everything else in here is pretty standard of what we talked about. It's saying 24 hours beforehand, send this message, then 127 minutes beforehand, send the 2-hour reminder, and then 10 minutes beforehand, send this reminder. Okay, so this is the sort of campaign that you would want to have stops on response set to off. Okay, and I'm going to just put that back into published out of best practice to how I want it. So that's the campaign editor. So from here, there are a number of ways that you use the campaign. So you may want to dive into videos regarding like how the triggers work, how you actually get these sent, how they work relative to opportunities. There's sort of a few directions you can go, but this is ultimately how your campaign editor works.